my name's Montgomery Thomas, Monty, and I have been kind of campaigning on behalf of freedom properly since I was about 16 years old. So I'm 20 now. For me, it all kind of began when I was 14, when lockdown hit. I thought lockdown was outrageous. I thought it was an attack on young people. I think it was illogical, unscientific, immoral. Most people would agree with that, really, these days. But back then, to say that was very controversial and very isolating. But I really felt that there was a hunger for freedom in the UK, and people maybe didn't even realize that. So I lived on the outskirts, on the outside of London, and I was commuting in quite a bit in order to demonstrate and protest and essentially just do what I felt I could do at the age of 16 in order to push back against authoritarianism and I would say kind of technocratic governmental overreach at the time. And then from that point, I've really just carried on ultimately. And I've grown my social media. And what I'm really trying to do is galvanize support and enthusiasm from young people when it just comes to discussing topics which are not deemed as okay in the mainstream, and are potentially run the risk of isolation and being, especially within the education system, being sort of isolated from your peers. So just to name a few, you've got kind of the trans debate and just saying there's two sexes, which the majority of young people actually do agree with. But saying that, the repercussions are so severe around climate change, around whether there's a debate to be had there. And not even that, I feel like it's two-sided. You've got, is climate change caused by humans? That's one debate. And then even if it is, which personally I don't believe it is, how do you deal with that? Well, it's not net zero because that's ridiculous and incredibly harmful. So there's that perspective too. And then you've also got looking at COVID still and critical race theory and all the gender politics stuff. People think all of these topics are unrelated. But I'd beg to differ. I think that there's definitely similarities amongst them all, which is, it's about saying, you are not allowed to have an opinion that opposes this. And for me, that's the biggest thing. We should have the ability to debate, converse, and push the boundaries, especially as young people. And that's what I'm saying. I have my opinions, but I'm not saying you have to agree with me, but at least disagree with me. But young people don't even want to do that these days. They just want to sort of crawl away and keep their head down and not have a voice for the future. So what I'm trying to do is campaign for freedom, campaign for conversation, debate, push back against mainstream narratives, and galvanize some strength within the younger generation.
All right, I want to read a quote about you from Dr. Claire Craig. People are always surprised to learn how young Monty actually is. His knack for crystallizing ideas, cutting straight to the heart of an issue, and communicating with clarity makes it seem like he has decades of experience. In truth, it's a rare combination of natural talent and relentless hard work that sets him apart. So I agree with that from what I've read and saw already. You have a lot of quotes like that already on your website.
Yeah, I mean, through the COVID era, I mean, Dr. Claire Craig, I mean, I just have so much respect and love for Claire, and she's been very supportive in many ways. And the individuals that have left comments for me and testimonials, if you like, on my website, are individuals that I have tremendous amounts of respect for, who've supported me and watched me from the age of like 17, 18. Up until now. So the more I galvanize, as I say, support and enthusiasm from the public, it's great. But there are some individuals like Claire and so forth, and or maybe Andrew Bridgen and David Cartland, and who have watched where I was, watched how isolated I was, and watched me go, do you know what? I'm not interested. I'm going to keep going anyway, and sort of turn it the other way. So for me, that's incredibly special.
So how did you get to this point so fast? Did you read just tons of books, or how did you become knowledgeable on so many issues so fast?
So, I've got great influences in terms of my mum and dad. And my mum is a psychologist. So when it came to the COVID era and sort of nudge theory and the government using fear and the SAGE committee using fear in order to control the population, and, introduce mandates that most of the public wouldn't have gone along with unless they were terrified. My mum looked at that and said, right, son, this is what's happening. do some research, help me on that front. And then my dad's very scientifically orientated. He's got a master's degree in philosophy, and yeah, as I say, has a great understanding of how to read scientific literature. So those kind of combinations are quite extraordinary, really, because especially around COVID, because I kind of had the scientific aspect around psychology and epidemiology, virus control, and how masks are nonsense, and looking at the data. Couple that with sort of the moral and philosophical aspects, and kind of like looking at the trolley problem, all of these things. From the age of 14, my dad, we had nothing else to do. So I don't know how familiar you are, I'm sure you are, with like Lockdown Skeptics, which is now the Daily Skeptic, was like, I would sit and read with my dad in order to understand things. Now, past that point, I've done my own thing. This is my full-time commitment. So I make sure that when I make very bold claims, because I make very bold claims, and I'm there with credible information and kind of peer-reviewed papers and so forth to back that. I'm not perfect. I know, I'm sure many people maybe pick up on mistakes I make. You know, I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be. But in general, I work really hard in order to not give a bad name and give ammunition to the opposition. Because, you know, when we make these some people make absurd claims, let's talking about climate change and so forth, which don't have much backing, but it's just something they read somewhere. It discredits us. So it's really important that we brush up on our literature, and it's something I try very hard to do, even though there's so much to kind of cram in. And I've forgotten a lot, especially on the COVID era, which but we have to do our best. So I'd say relentless research, studying, and just being sensitive to the fact that without that, we have no case, because we are going to be attacked, and any mistake we made is going to be used against us. And we have to do our very best to be watertight when it comes to disagreeing with mainstream propaganda.
So you kind of seem to be everywhere at once, in that you've got this big online presence, but then you're out in the real world wearing the placards and with a bullhorn sometimes. And don't you think you're reaching a far different audience in the real world versus online?
I think what you said there is really poignant and really important to me. And one thing I've always done is, express that social media is an important tool, but you do get locked in an echo chamber. And my whole motivation is, no, get out on the street, go and speak to people. Now, I'm one man, and I have people that help me, and I'm building sort of a network there. But to do what I do and go out on the streets all the time, go on tubes, communicate with the public, and have those hard conversations, it's an exhausting, relentless, very isolating, difficult task. It is. But it kind of needs to be done, because we saw in lockdown times, and we even see it now, we've got mass censorship. So the only way to dodge that is to take it to the streets, get some leaflets. And at one point across the UK, we had loads of people doing that when resisting lockdowns and talking about the vaccine and the mandates and so forth. That was something that was a real focal point. With grassroots efforts. And I really impressed that upon people, because it's funny, it's actually a police officer spoke to me recently when I was interviewed for a recent arrest. I don't know if we'll touch on that, but and he said to me, so you're an online influencer then? I was like, hang on. No, I don't want to be, I'm not an influencer. He said, you're one of these young influencers. I'm like, no, I'm like, that's not actually who I am. And there's an element of it, because I use social media because it's a great tool, but I promote the message more than anything. Get out on the street, do outreach, speak to people, engage with your neighbor, engage with the people at the shop. You know, when you go to a shop, have a conversation about cash. If you're paying cash, why is it important to use cash? Why do we need to push back against kind of mass digitalization and surveillance? If everyone does these little things, there'll be a snowball effect. But the process in which that happens, it can be very exhausting. But what's worse? Having these conversations, making a commitment to do outreach, making a commitment to speak to your neighbor and so forth, or going into George Orwell 1984 and having our freedoms attacked, disrupted, and having, no freedom of expression and mass surveillance.
I'm loving what you're doing with this man on the street interview thing. I really like that. I think you added like 11-minute one where you're talking about climate change. You got groups of young people. You're talking to them. They kind of look like classic left wingers with the colored hair and with the ring in the nose and all that. And they start out completely opposed to you, but you're just staying calm and just talking to them. And they end up saying, I don't want to take anybody's right to drive a car away. I love that calm way that you just make your case. It sounds like you've done a lot of that in the real world too, huh?
Yeah, it's paramount. And I know the clip you're talking about, and I think they start off saying like, that is ridiculous. There's loads that they always say. There's that classic statistic they use, which is there's 97% of scientists or something all agree that man-made climate change is real, but which is just a bogus statistic. But you're right. By the end of it, that we were kind of, I realized we sort of agree more than disagree. And that calmness is essential. And there's, one thing I'm really reluctant to promote is this sort of puritanical mindset that, oh, I know something, you don't know something, I'm above you, I'm better than you, I'm going to talk down to you. We see it a lot. People use this term pure blood when talking about the vaccine, which I think's like horrific. I don't think it's a nice term at all. It's like, what you're suggesting they're like, what, dirty, unwashed people we shouldn't like mix with? And like, no, we need to be calm, respectful, and understanding that people are entitled to make mistakes. Young people especially have been brainwashed through the education system to believe all sorts of ideologies, especially around climate change. I mean, it's literally a part of the geography GCSE. If you don't submit to the idea that we are destroying the planet, then you're going to fail your geography GCSE. That's literally what will happen. So it's just ludicrous at this point. However, staying calm, having those conversations and being humble and not being so like, we need to make sure that we're not falling into the same trap as all these classic lefties of being oversensitive snowflakes. Like, what do you expect? So people, I've been out with individuals before who go out to give out information and have joined me in that, and then have got angry at the fact that people disagree with them. I'm like, well, what did you expect? You're spreading a message that most people disagree with. So you're absolutely right. A calm, humble, understanding approach is way more effective, especially as it wrong foots them, because the media promotes this idea that we're right-wing extremists, conspiracy theorist nut jobs, and that we're all terrifying and angry and volatile and emotional. Whereas when you come across and you're actually just calm, respectful, and lovely, they don't know what to do. Really wrong foots them. So it's kind of a fun process at the same time.
No, it's totally heartwarming for me to see you doing that. We need more people do that. I need to use that approach more often. Dr. David Cartland said about you that you are just the sort of future politician we need in this country once we drain the swamp. Are you thinking about that at all already?
This is something a lot of people ask me, and it is my intention to move in that direction. However, I'm only 20, and I am also not. I don't feel that the political climate is in a position at the moment to take someone like me on, in the sense that I will not, I'm so principled, I will not sell my principles in any capacity. And as soon as you go into belonging to a party, you have to do that. And I won't do that. And we saw, look, Reform are doing some good things. No one can deny that. They're doing some good things. It's a bit like saying Trump's doing some good things with a side dish of nonsense at the same time. And no one's perfect. And look, if you had a gun to my head and said, which party are you going to choose? I think the majority of people in our position are going to say Reform. But that's not a nuanced response. My nuanced response is, I will not support a party. I know I've reiterated a lot about lockdown and COVID, but for me, it's a really paramount part of our history and the past 5 years. All has happened because of lockdown. It set a terrible precedent. And I don't think we've heard from Farage proper kind of recognition for the failings around lockdown. There's been this idea that there's going to be a COVID inquiry, but it's all very loose, sort of, oh, we want to kind of appease the people who disagree with lockdown, but we don't want to upset all the people. And that's not what we need. And until I see a party or a political approach, which I think we see more from someone like Rupert Lowe, that is going to take on board the atrocities of lockdown, the vaccine, the harm it's caused, net zero, and all of these things, then I feel comfortable subscribing to any political movement, mainstream political movement like that. So as it stands, I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing. And if that naturally evolves, that I grow to an extent that somebody somewhere later on down the line comes forward and says, we're interested in taking you on board in our political party, it's going to be a really interesting T-junction for me. But that will be on the condition that none of my principles are there to be sold or compromised. So if that means I never get into politics and I'm never in that position, then so be it. But I have optimism and I have hope.
Okay, I'm interested in what you can share about who else is in your network or who you're working with. I think you mentioned a guy named James Harvey, another young guy that's pushing back. And I may have seen, I don't know if Nazar and Veronica has been protesting with you, and maybe the Yellow Boards people, or the
so I know all of these I know all these individuals.
Yeah.
So Yellow Boards are great. What's good about Yellow Boards is they are regimented and organized and very committed. I don't know how else to describe it, really. They are very committed, and they are out there in London regularly doing exactly what I preach, which is outreach and on the ground kind of work. And what the only nuance between myself and Yellow Boards is my objective is a little bit more, I would say, direct. This is no criticism of Yellow Boards. It's just my approach. I'm more direct. I'm more interested in like really engaging with the public and having those difficult conversations. I go on the tubes a lot. I want to articulate my points, maybe on a megaphone at times. And that's the only difference. But ultimately, we have the same aim, which is wake people up through grassroots work. James Harvey does some amazing things with Students Against Tyranny, which was born out of lockdown and a pushback against governmental overreach, essentially, in the vaccine. And now he's moved in the direction of defending women's spaces a lot and going to university campuses. That's another great thing. So those groups and individuals, I'm familiar with, and they do some great work. What I'm trying to do is bring in people who are actually unfamiliar with the past kind of 5 years and what we've been doing on a grassroots level. I want to bring in fresh, new, young faces. And what's very heartwarming and humbling is having students who I went to school with who opposed my position massively on lockdown and the masks and accused me of killing their grandparents and all this nonsense. I've had messages from them saying, you were right, I'm sorry, and I'm really glad that you stuck it out. So there's clearly, obviously, we're talking maybe like 10 people that have done that. But that's actually quite a lot. And it takes a lot for someone to send you a message. It'd be quite interesting to know how many haven't sent me a message, how many are willing to get involved. And that's why I've built my own, I've got my website, I've got my own institute. The institute is there to sort of fund, support, and I know I use this word a lot, but galvanize strength and unity. And it's not about saying I make this point earlier on, it's not about saying my approach is the best approach. We are all individuals, and I'm a massive promoter of freedom. And that doesn't mean freedom for me and not for thee. And if you have a strategy and an approach which is going to push back against authoritarianism and push back against mainstream narratives, I may not agree with your approach, but I encourage it, because these days it's hard to come by those sorts of organizations. So if anyone, just a little plug, if anyone wants to get in contact with me and ask for my support, I'm really happy to give it in whatever way I can. And I will be building on my end kind of a unity of young minds who are maybe not as familiar with these topics, but that's good. And that's what outreach is about. And that is what forging a more influential demographic of young people is. I want to bring young people in under my, maybe sounds a bit patronizing, maybe not under my wing, but I want to bring young people into my, you could say, movement, who are actually less familiar with these topics, and then learn and have these conversations. I'd much rather be friends with people who disagree with me and want to break out of an echo chamber than a bunch of people who want to preach to the choir and preach to the converted. That's my perspective.
That's one thing I've heard you say multiple times, I think, is that you really learn stuff when you talk to people who disagree with you. So you go out of your way to find people who disagree with you and talk to them. Fantastic.
Absolutely.
I wanted to mention that I put your link tree is a great place for people to go and find all of your work. I put that link in the show description, your Instagram and your X feed. And then I went to your website and I donated, because I think this is that's the place to donate, on your website, right?
Absolutely. And thank you so much. I didn't realize that I have to sit and what I like to do is go through all of my donations and support and send thank yous back and so forth. But if you have donated, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Okay. So I was curious, are you worried about anybody physically getting abusive with you when you're out there on the tube? Do people really push back that hard that they want to fight you even, or no?
We've had that. Back in 2021, for example, when I was doing tube outreach, and there was kind of like people wearing masks still, and I was talking about how COVID is being used as a precursor to digital IDs, a social credit system, control, mass surveillance. People get really angry and emotional. And I've never actually been physically attacked on the tubes. I suppose these days people are a bit more open because social media has enabled us to have some kind of a voice. And this idea of 2020, oh, we're all conspiracy theorists, I think is losing its validity. And we are being seen as the ones that keep sort of having the right ideas. So we turned around and said lockdown was a bad idea. Everyone said no. And then turns out many studies, and even in the mainstream show, probably wasn't a good idea. Same applies to the vaccine mandates and stuff. So we have been proven right time and time again. So it's not really like this anymore. I will say though, when I did some tube outreach around climate change, man-made climate change, that felt like I'd gone back in time to 2021. People are really terrified to succumb to the idea that there could be the possibility that we don't destroy the environment as humans, and actually we do need more CO2, and it's fine, you know. And I speak very calmly, but I've had people get so angry. You may have even seen some of that footage, people calling me, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but just like fucking idiots. And I'm there like, hang on a minute, is that what you got to say? And I love, it's such a cliche now on the tubes. You'll be on the tubes, you'll give a speech, you'll speak to people, they'll stay quiet, and then you'll get maybe an extra carriage down, and you'll hear someone shout abuse at you, but only when their stop comes up. So then they just get off, and you're just there like, right, thanks. That's really credible. But it just makes them look stupid, because I'm not even, I've known this so many times, I'm not even saying agree with me. If you're going to disagree with me, brilliant. That's what we need to be doing. Don't just shout abuse at me. And that goes back to that statement you made about the importance of kind of being calm. They can highlight their own stupidity because they're so emotional. I had a lot of people say to me, is like, I'm scared to adhere to what you're saying, because if you're wrong, then I will be responsible for destroying my grandchildren's future. But it's the same thing as COVID. It's like, oh, well, I'm terrified of killing my mum. I'm terrified of killing my grandma. It all comes down to fear. But if we had a proper open discussion about data, you know, and if people understood that the UK literally contributes 1% of CO2 emissions, you know, if you were to destroy the UK tomorrow, just obliterate it, well, hypothetically speaking, nothing would happen. Nothing. Then it gets people thinking. Just small statistics like that, but just no one knows this stuff. It's insane.
I'm curious about the scale of the outreach you've done on the tube. Have you just ridden lots of different lines for years and spent many hours doing this?
I get recognized on tubes now. So that's an interesting one. People are like, oh, not in a good way. They're like, oh, I know you. I'm like, oh, I'm waiting for it. It's like, and then they'll probably get off the tube and say something nasty. But anyway, the tubes I ride tend to be overground, or I don't know how familiar you are with London tubes, but okay. the Elizabeth line, London Overground line, which has now been renamed to a bunch of woke titles like Windrush line, Suffragette line, and all of this nonsense. That's where our taxpayer money goes, by the way. It doesn't go into solving, you know, like the rubbish roads we have. It goes into low traffic neighborhoods and renaming tube signs. That's great. Anyway, I digress. But you know, I've ridden a lot of tube lines, and I've done tube outreach. Oh, I can't even say how many times now. I mean, hundreds, if not. Like, maybe I should have been counting, but like, this is my 1000th tube outreach. But I used to have more of a team, I'd say, more in COVID time, and I'm going to bring that back. So if you keep an eye on my content, if you keep an eye on my social media output, I only post a little bit of what I do, really, because a lot of it I do off camera, because having a cameraman and so forth, all of these things is quite complicated. But what I want to have, kind of, as I say, a team of specifically young people out on the tubes, out in the streets, talking to people. Winter is on the horizon. which always makes things difficult, especially in the UK, because people don't want to go outside and hand leaflets out and speak to people. But the tubes are underground, right? So you can stay dry, you can stay warm, and you can do lots of outreach. So the winter for me, I think, is going to be a key period where I'm going to be incredibly annoying on the Christmas Day rush kind of thing, handing information out about social credit systems and digital IDs.
So have you mentored other people that are doing the same thing, or have you taken your show on the road to any other cities to do this in other teams?
Do you know what? I've never gone to other cities.
Yeah.
And if I had more of a network of people who have, because a lot of young people, you know, the reason there's so few young people that do this is also because it's very labor intensive and people have to work. People have to give up your free time is really hard. Fortunately, I've managed to put myself in a position where I've started my own business and I can financially sustain, and I have the freedom to do whatever I want, basically. However, going to other cities would be really interesting. And during lockdown times, places like Liverpool, they did not agree with lockdown one bit, and there's a complete demographic shift when you go to different cities. So I would be interested to do that. And at the moment, I am going to be launching kind of early August. There'll be a promotional video that comes out properly. My organization, which is MTI, Montgomery Institute, which is going to be there with young people, allowing other young people to contact me, get involved, come and see what I do. And if you want to volunteer your support, and then potentially later on down the line, as I become more established, actually have like a role, have a job within my organization, then I'd absolutely love that. That's my end game. I want to professionalize for other people, and as much as campaigning and so forth should be done from a perspective of goodwill, that's absolutely the case. But it's no secret, money makes the world go round, and having that kind of funding support from the public enables me to bring in young people, pay for their travel, pay for the tube tickets to do tube outreach, engage with people. And that's exactly what I've been doing. I've been self-sustaining this now until very recently for, a good 3 years. So I'm kind of in a position where I've volunteered doing this for 3 years, but now I need the support from the public. And with that, I'll be able to bring in more young people, mentor young people, and build something really, really, in my opinion, I think would be brilliant. Imagine that, an organization which has young people, a network across, starting in London, promoting freedom, pushing back against authoritarianism, having debate, having conversations, putting in the grassroots work. I mean, it's be a dream come true. And that's what I've been working on for years now.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of it. I'm really enthused about, of course, about what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. Do you want to talk about the details of the arrest? Do you call it? Of course, it was an arrest and the blowback, or what sort of public response you've gotten since then?
Yeah, so I mentioned obviously at the start of this conversation that I also am quite focused on the whole gender discussion, and I don't even believe in gender. I just think it's a social concept which I have no interest in complying with. There's two sexes, and that's it. If you believe anything else and you believe you're in a different sex, then you're mentally ill. Is my perspective. So based on that, I went to London Pride 2025 with a placard that said that the trans flag equals mental illness. I was there for about 20 to 30 minutes. 2 police officers came over to tell me I had to take the placard off because it was going to cause distress and upset people. Apparently that's my problem. Apparently my sign upsets people, so I've got to take it off. Like, piece that together. But I said no, because on principle, I have the right to demonstrate, have freedom of expression. I have inalienable rights. In my opinion, God-given rights, which I refuse to give up. So I didn't take it off. However, sensitive to the situation, I withdrew myself, walked about 2 streets away for 9 further officers to come around the corner, plus 2 more, so 11 in total, to arrest me under public order offence, which is basically a way of it's a piece of legislation which is abused by the police all of the time because it's so subjective. It's like, what does that even mean, public order? Apparently I was there to cause distress, offend people, blah, blah, blah. It's just ridiculous. And I made my point really clear, since when did we police on emotion rather than law? So I was arrested by, 11 police officers. I was put in the police van and I was taken to Charing Cross police station, where I was held there for about 9 hours in solitary. And then I went for some ridiculous interview, which was just laughable. I mean, imagine having to sit there and explain why you feel that being arrested for having an opinion is not a very good thing. I don't even know. I'm just kind of there like, guy, what is this conversation? What is this interview? What do you want me to say? So in the end, I was never charged. I left on something called a pre-charge, which is to say that I can be charged later on down the line. With a pre-charge, you can still be given bail conditions. So currently I'm banned from the city of Westminster, and I have to reside at my home address. I'm not allowed to sleep anywhere else, leave the country or anything like that. So it's just ludicrous. So for wearing a placard, I've been arrested by 11 officers who and we can't even like get officers to turn up at burglaries these days. So that's good police resources. So I had 11 officers. I was then arrested, put in a solitary for 9 hours, patronized through some nonsense interview, had my sign confiscated, banned from Westminster, told I could be charged in 3 months' time, and told I'm not allowed to sleep at any address and have to reside at my home, all for wearing a placard stating a medical fact that until 2019, the World Health Organization also believed it was a mental disorder, mental illness. So it's just insane. And what's important is I've had people even in our fraternity sort of be like, I don't agree with that statement. I don't believe, and I'm like, okay, that's okay. But I should have the right to say it. I don't care if you agree or disagree. It's the principle. You can't be arresting people for having opinions, which, in my opinion, are a complete fact. Absolutely ludicrous. So I'm fighting this. The first stage is get the bail conditions thrown out. Been working on that. I've actually had an update on that today. They just want to make it as difficult as possible. Everything takes ages. I've got to go back to the station to have an update to get. It's being shifted to I'm only allowed into Soho. Sorry, I'm not allowed in Soho and Mayfair because apparently that area of London is frequented by the trans and gay community. So what the police are essentially saying is the trans and gay community occupy 2 areas of London, which is just mental. Yeah, it's just a lot. I don't know what to say. It's so hilarious, but the police are so captured by this ideology that they're just not going to shift on it. So I'm going to fight it, and I've got the backing of the Free Speech Union to help me on this as well, which is brilliant. So I've got great lawyers, great support, and I'm very fortunate. But it doesn't stop the fact that it's utterly moronic.
So this is a decision by the police that they've decided you can't go to 2 places. They have the power to do this.
Apparently so. Yeah, even though I've not even been charged. I've not been charged. I've had I've been placed on a pre-charge, which, as I say, is just like having your cake and eating it. So we're not going to charge you because we know we can't, but we're still going to place bail conditions on you. That's outrageous. Like the way I see it, my ancestors helped build those streets. I've paid tax to say that I have access to them. I've been a good law-abiding citizen my whole life. This is my capital city, and you're banning me from an area of it. And what's very, very interesting is we hear this saying a lot, don't we, around surveillance, because I'm massively against mass surveillance, CCTV and digital IDs and facial recognition. And people say, well, if you've not done anything wrong, you've got nothing to hide, which is just nonsense. And my case is a perfect example of it. If people believe that that statement I've just made is the case, and they don't believe that I should have been arrested, the only way that they can police my bail conditions is through mass surveillance and facial recognition, because now my face is on a police database, my fingerprints and all of this. So if I go to Westminster and there's a facial recognition van, that will get flagged on the police system, and it will tell them that I'm breaking bail, and then I will be put in custody until I have a court case. So this is what the facial recognition vans that are being rolled out across London and digital IDs are going to be used to do. It's not for our safety. It's to police us. It's to surveil us. It's to bring in mass authoritarianism and governmental overreach. It's terrifying. So this is why I do what I do. This is why I'm so motivated to turn what I've been doing for the past 3 years into something that's sustainable. And yeah, that's what I want to really. I'm terrified of it. I genuinely, after what's happened to me, it just goes to show what's waiting with Agenda 2030 goals, the Great Reset kind of mentality, and all of these things. The only way they can bring in these goals is through mass surveillance. And if I disagree with those goals, what's going to happen? I'm going to be put in prison. It's terrifying.
So 11 police officers went after you for having an opinion, but didn't Claire Fox say something like, if you wanted the police to leave you alone, you should have just spent your time stealing phones or something?
That was Douglas Murray. She was
Douglas
quoting
Murray.
Douglas Murray,
Okay.
wrote an article in the Spectator, and just said, yeah, go nick some phones or hold a pro jihad sign or something, because it's just like I'm laughing now because it honestly is funny, and I just, when I remember being arrested by the police and just kind of joking, I'm like, guys, you must know this is just ridiculous. But obviously there's massively serious undertones to this whole arrest. It's a really like sinister situation. But in my opinion, I'm glad it's happened to an extent, because it's just highlighted the ridiculousness of the Met Police, and they've gone viral once again. I'm definitely not the first case. Like, there's people being arrested for praying outside of abortion clinics. It's mental. The only difference between these individuals and myself is I already had some kind of an online following, which they didn't know. And that's why they've been shamed and gone absolutely viral, which is in that sense is good. I'm kind of grateful for taking on the burden of dealing with the Met Police, because I'm hoping that in the long run is going to be a positive for other people, and there more recognition and more exposure to how corrupt and broken and two-tier led the Met Police, in fact, all police organizations or areas of the police force operate.
Are there any woke opinions that are on the banned list? Anything? Can you hold any woke placard you want without any repercussions?
Well, look, back in, I think it was maybe May, don't quote me on that, I think it was March, April, May time, there was there was a trans protest, and there were people were holding placards saying "Death to J.K. Rowling." So you got people being arrested for apparently inciting violence on Twitter, but you can hold a placard which says "Death to an individual." So, I mean, it's just like, what am I supposed to? It's two-tier policing. It's absolutely outrageous. And there was an interesting moment in my arrest. I think it's in some of the footage where they were arresting me, and I was saying, so what you're saying is I'm not the problem. My placard isn't the problem. You're saying that these people are actually dangerous. And the officer's response to that was like, well, I don't know what you mean by these people. I wouldn't use that term. And I'm like, you can just tell there's this, even though we've had a court ruling clarifying that there's only two sexes, that's still not good enough for the police. And I believe We Are Fair Cop, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that organization, but they recently won a case to stop, I can't remember which area of the UK it was, but stop the police protesting alongside trans pride and so forth, because it's a political stance now. It always has been, but that is widely recognized, and yet the police don't want to accept that. They are politically motivated, which is not what policing is supposed to be at all.
Do you think the individual policemen are woke, or are they being forced to be woke?
I'll tell you another story. So when I went into the police station, you have to get checked in, you get searched again, blah, blah, blah. And this officer says to me, he says, Mr. Toms, I'm going to ask you some questions now. But please understand, it's not there to offend you or upset you or cause you any distress. But the first question I have to ask you is, do you identify as white British? And I just started smiling. I'm just there like, oh, and it just goes to show that when you go in there, there's signs everywhere. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to, and it's that now they don't really live up to that. I can tell you, you do not feel comfortable in a police cell. But maybe if I told them I'm trans or something, I would have got special treatment. I remember when I was being arrested, I asked the officers, can I get searched by a woman because I identify as one? Because I don't mean that obviously, but we have cases of men identifying as women and then being strip searched and these are men who are convicted rapists being searched by female police officers because they identify as a woman, and they're in female prisons. It's mental. So that's why I make that joke. But do I think that individuals are politically motivated? 100%, 100%, especially as we're going on. I mean, all of this sort of came about, didn't it? The whole trans Me Too movement all sort of properly triggered in about 2018. So in 2 years' time, this whole conversation is going to be going on for 10 years. So if we just think If an officer is 25 years old in the year 2028, then they were in the education system 10 years before that, being told that this ideology you need and the trans debate and identifying as whatever you want is acceptable, and you have to adhere to that. And anyone who doesn't is evil. They're coming out the education system and becoming a police officer. So the education system is a massive focus point for me, because it's an opportunity to condition young people to serve an ideology. And that's exactly what's going to happen. It is happening. We're already seeing it in my generation even.
So another topic that you've talked about on your videos is pro-masculinity. Do you want to talk about that a bit? Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, we have a massive crisis in the UK, which is around young men. And we are attacked a lot in the education system if we want to be traditionally masculine. I'll tell you my opinions now, and I'll get called a self-proclaimed misogynist for saying this, but I don't care. First of all, the definition of misogyny is to hate women, which is, people throw this word around. I don't hate women. I love women. I think women are great, beautiful, great. So I'm not misogynist. So we'll park that one. I'll still get that. I'm a traditional guy. I believe in the family unit. I would quite like my future wife to be a full-time mom and bring up children, and I'll go out and work and provide. I enjoy that traditional dynamic. That's something that I want. And until very recently, that was kind of accepted as being normal. But that's not to say that's a blueprint for everyone else. That's how I want to live my life. And I'm not going to suggest that everybody else does that, obviously. That's number one. But if you have that opinion, because I did have this opinion within the education system, you'll be called a misogynist, you'll be called sexist, you'll be called a woman hater. And there's a reason I don't support Andrew Tate, but there's a reason he is a thing. And there's a reason that young men look to someone like Tate, because we have no good quality masculine figures, because we're told to be masculine, to be traditional is threatening. But what this has caused instead is a knock-on effect of young men getting into gangs, getting into knife culture, getting into awful music promoting this false, insecure sense of masculinity, rather than saying, do you know what? It's not patronizing to hold a door open for a woman, or to want to take a woman out for dinner and pay and cover the entire bill. That's not patronizing. That's not demeaning. But we don't do that. So we've got this kind of outburst where young men are terrified to just be masculine, be strong. So then getting into knife culture and gang culture as an alternative. And then worse than that, we're in a position where if we have no masculinity and no strength in this country around men, then we're not going to have, I'm not suggesting we should, but this is a case of principle. If there was the need for a revolution, if things got that bad where we needed men, hypothetically, to take it to the streets, to say we're not doing this, we're going to get a load of men who sat on their Xbox. That is what the reality. We need strong masculine men. It's men who build roads. It's men who come up with new ideas. It's men who take on physical threats. And all these women who think what I'm saying is disgusting and sexist and misogynistic, I always ask the question, like, if your husband or your partner wasn't in your house when there was a break-in, who would you call? They'll say, oh, I'd call the police, who's predominantly a police force made up of men. So this whole deal, we can get rid of men, we don't need them, is such a harmful, it's such harmful rhetoric. And we've got mass male suicide rates. Men don't know how to control their emotions. Men are told that it's okay to be emotional all the time. I disagree with that. I'm not saying don't have emotions, but we should be teaching young men to control their emotions, control their anger, control their sexual motivations, because ultimately that is masculinity. It's not some scary thing. It's about controlling yourself, about being calm. It's about having boundaries, having principles. And that's what we need to be teaching young men. What's happening is we're getting things like Tate come in and say, get lots of women, get lots of nice cars. That does appeal. I'm sure it appeals to pretty much all men. But that's not a nuanced message. I would suggest that most men be looking at the likes of Jordan Peterson as a role model for how to be young and masculine and express yourself like that, because it is really worrying. If we lose the essence of pure masculinity in this country, which I'd say we have, and also in the West, then our governments know they have the easy, fluent ability to control us. because it's men who say no. It's men that lead revolutions. It's men who fight back. And I would say, buck your ideas up, go to the gym, be physically able, educate yourself, hold yourself properly, love women, support women, aim to provide, aim to support your country as well. And if men were to do that, then I think we'd have a much more prosperous future.
So speaking of fitness and health, do you have ideas on like proper diet? Is that part of your outreach at all about eating?
Yeah, I'm very anti-carbs. I think carbs are like the devil of food. I'm very pro meat, so I will eat. Usually, I'll have steak for lunch with a couple of eggs, maybe some sausages, with a glass of maybe raw milk, and then if for kind of a treat, I'll have something like maybe yogurt with some raw honey as a compromise. I'll have lots of berries and things like that. I think that refined sugar is horrible, and I think that carbs are also horrible. I think that this mainstream propaganda around carbs needing to be a essential part of your diet is utterly ridiculous. That's why we have obesity, and it makes you lethargic. It gives you brain fog. It pads out your diet with essentially sugar and glucose, and I wouldn't recommend it at all. If you get, I'm not puritanical about it. I know people who are strict carnivores, and I don't recommend that. I think that there are people that for autoimmune conditions that it works for because they're very sensitive to certain things. But for the average person, my principle is don't buy things with more than one ingredient, and if you can help it. Just buy things, steak, avocados, eggs, lots of fresh produce from the farm. Stay away from foods that have lots of pesticides and so forth. And I would say stick to predominantly an animal-based diet with some fruits and vegetables. It works for me. So
if you are buying stuff, maybe not buy it at Amazon Fresh, or you have ideas on the surveillance there?
I wonder why you mentioned that. Amazon Fresh, my favorite store. I have a bit of a real hatred. Not many people discuss Amazon Fresh stores, but there's stores in London, and there's a few, I think, maybe outside of London, which you go in, you scan your bank card, and then you look at the ceiling, and there's a camera every like 60 centimeters, and it's tracking you. So if you pick up some lettuce, it will recognize you picked up the lettuce and put it in your basket. And then when you walk out, the barrier will open, tap into your credit card, the transaction will be made, and this is all functions through surveillance. And people think, oh, that's really convenient, that's great, but it's the stepping stones towards a complete Orwellian state. And I'm concerned because if it was just like a small organization doing this, but it's Amazon, who are direct links into our politics these days, who are motivated to bring in artificial intelligence and use mass surveillance in order to make our lives convenient, which is going to remove jobs, and it's going to give the state the ability to tap into that. And it just reinforces us being a big brother and being watched and being surveilled, and this dehumanizing agenda to remove people and just be watched all the time. I'm sick of it. We're more surveilled in London than any other city in Europe. We're on par with China. So basically, what would these cameras be used for? And I would say that Amazon Fresh stores is setting a precedent for something like a social credit system. Imagine this, you go in, you've been jaywalking and you've littered. Okay, maybe littering is not good. Don't mind a bit of jaywalking. It's not that big deal, but maybe don't litter. But because of that, your social credit score goes down. So then you go into your Amazon Fresh store and the cameras are watching you, and you pick up the things you want to put in your basket. And then you go to check out with the automatic barriers and it rejects you because it says your social credit score is too low. And this all functions under mass surveillance and cameras. Is what they have in China. That's what I'm terrified of. I think it's outrageous. And I don't think people understand the connotations of mass surveillance and what cameras and our government's BRIC card and digital IDs and all these things, how they're all linked. So no, I would boycott Amazon Fresh stores full stop and go to local farm shops, support your local businesses.
Are they using facial recognition right now in Amazon Fresh? That's how they know?
That's a very good question. Now, I've been told that there's actually individuals in India who are watching the CCTV and are actually like doing it manually. This is what I've been informed of, but I don't know if that's 100% true. And I don't think as it stands, they're using facial recognition. In my local Tesco, I believe they're pushing to bring in facial recognition. My understanding is the CCTV cameras, if there's a light circling it, that tends to mean that it's facial recognition in operation. Now, don't quote me on that. And this is something that I've discussed at the beginning of this conversation, the importance of knowing your facts. And so I'm always very clear, like I 100% know that. But that is my brief understanding. I don't think Amazon Fresh are using facial recognition as it stands, but as it's normalized, I've no doubt that it will be a part of just how supermarkets operate in general. Like in Sainsbury's, which is another supermarket in the UK, you go to the self-service checkout, you get given a receipt and you have to scan the receipts to exit. I refuse to. I just barge through the barrier. I would refuse. I mean, and not to mention receipts are covered in all sorts of toxins, which are really bad for you. That's a whole nother conspiracy theory. But I just am so. All of this comes down to something really simple. I am so exhausted with this patronizing lack of trust in the public, this governmental overreach, this constant need for surveillance, this constant need to be watched, monitored, told what to do, told where to go, having streets closed off with low traffic neighborhoods and having cameras seeing if you're going down one-way streets that have been put in place because there's cycle lanes, fining you £60 if you go down there, taking away your money, getting parking tickets. There's nowhere to park your car anymore. We have ULEZ, we have congestion charge, we have the government breathing down our throats. You go in the tube now, it drives me insane. And all you have is big banners. Walk, don't run. Be careful when you're drinking alcohol. Hold onto the handle rail. Don't run down the escalator. Mind the gap. Don't hold your phone in front before getting onto a tube. We have it on the tannoys. It actually says on the tannoys, if you're going out drinking tonight, make sure you eat a full meal beforehand. This is Transport for London. So I've just listed there, I think, over a dozen examples of this nanny state mentality where I am so exhausted and sick and tired of our government having an invested interest in our private lives. And that's what ultimately I'm pushing back against.
We have a little bit of that nanny state stuff here in Minnesota. It's going to be 90 degrees Fahrenheit. They sent out a warning saying you should sit in the shade and make sure and drink water and stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
We have the same thing. You have the same thing. You should see our maps that when they do the weather reporting, they have like, I don't know what this is in Fahrenheit. I don't know the translation, but in centigrade, we're looking at maybe like 22 degrees or something, and it will come out red. And it used to be a nice little, like, it was green with a little sunshine looking, image. These days it's just red. It's like constant fear and nanny state. Well, that's another one they have on the London Underground. There's a poster that says, make sure you're drinking plenty of water in the heat. And it's just mind numbing. It's like, if you need to be told to do that, then I'm really worried. What have you been doing your whole life when you needed the government to tell you what to do like that? Bizarre.
I haven't seen the same thing when it's cold here about make sure and wear your coat. I think that's part of it's the global warming thing. They want to scare you
that's
about
interesting.
That.
That is interesting. Yeah.
One more question about the Amazon Fresh stores. I'm kind of obsessed by that. That when you pick up a head of lettuce, the camera is seeing the lettuce. It's not that it's packaged and the lettuce has a barcode on it. I'm just curious.
It will see you pick it up. So when I say there's a lot of cameras,
yeah,
I mean, you can Google inside of Amazon Fresh store, for example, and you'll see camera. They're all hanging from the ceiling, so they're watching you pick up the lettuce. So it's not barcoded. No, it's you're watched and monitored on a CCTV.
And probably it's keeping track of what products you're looking at you didn't buy, and maybe it can use that somehow. It seems like they can pick up a lot of information doing that. Yeah.
A lot of information. And let's say I went in there breaking bail. I mean, I'm not just to make it clear, I'm not doing that. But that will be used. It's like Montgomery, Tom's broken bail buying lettuce. It's just so, I don't know how people can so naively, after all that we've seen with our, not just the Labour government we got, but the Conservative government, after the 5 years of this nonsense, how we can possibly trust our government to have good intentions when it comes to monitoring us, I don't know. It genuinely baffles me. And as we've mentioned many times, that humble approach of communicating that with the public is essential. But nevertheless, there's a massive part of me that just goes, what the Yeah. Yeah. How can you possibly believe that this is for our safety? It baffles me. I cannot get my head around it.
Are you currently using cash as much as you can just to reduce the surveillance?
Yeah, of course. I'm very pro-choice, so I use card and I use cash. I use as much cash as I can, but there's occasionally I'll use card. It's more about, I just want people to have the choice. And with this Brit card, which it's called Labour Together, bringing in this thing called a Brit card in the UK, mandated, and it's essentially a centralized digital ID with all of your information on it, health records, bank history, where you go, what you do, everything will be centralized in one space. And what they're doing it under? Mass migration. So create a problem, allow mass migration to happen, and then bring along this solution of, oh, well, we'll be able to police it if everyone has a digital ID and a central bank digital currency, and we can track you. And it will be all of everyone's information on one centralized database. That's terrifying. For me, that's the hill to die on. If they bring in digital IDs, I'm a firm believer in sticking it out. And I'm in London, right? I'm in the heart of the beginning, if not we are within an Orwellian state. But I will consider leaving because I just think I'll be arrested and in prison for the rest of my life because I will not adhere to any of their ridiculous laws that they may push to bring in, and the only way they're going to do that is through a digital ID. I won't have a digital ID. That's just non-negotiable. I will not have one. So I won't be able to drive. I won't be able to go abroad because my passport will be on there. I won't be able to get car insurance. I won't be able to get a house. I won't be able to rent a flat. I won't be able to buy a car because all of these things need identification, and it will all be on a mandated digital ID, and I won't have one. So I will essentially have to go and live in a caravan up a hill somewhere. That's really what's going to happen, and people don't even know this.
Have you picked out another country yet as a plan B that you might go to?
Not got that far. On the spot, might go to somewhere like Jamaica. Just go and live in a field in Jamaica or something. I've got some friends who are looking to move to Jamaica, a Jamaican friend. I might just go with him because I just feel like I need to just go. If we lose this battle, which I will never give up and I will continue to fight, there'll be a part of me which may just want to flee into a field somewhere and have chickens. Because I will have by the year 2030 with the Agenda 2030 goals will be a turning point. Have we won? Have we lost? And they will have to. There's a very good chance I'm going to be. I don't want to wish this on myself, but locked up, and many people will be going down a sort of Julian Assange route if they stick to their principles as much as they say they will. However, that's not to say that this is my intention. It's fully my intention to fight. I would love to get into mainstream politics and be a voice of reason within Parliament. But as we've already mentioned, that's going to be incredibly challenging, but I'm up for the challenge, and I do believe I'll pull it off.
You're not worried that living in Jamaica would be dangerously hot since it's already so hot in London right now?
I might have to bring some of the signs with me just to remind me, make sure I drink water.
I first became aware of you through your pushback against the climate scam. I mentioned this in my last podcast that Bill Nye, he's pushing 70, and he's thinking he can just wait around until the climate skeptics die, and then things are going to be great. But then you at the age of 20, I think he's going to have a long wait for the old age to take you on.
Good. Yeah, Bill Nye, I forgot all about being Bill Nye, actually. Bill Nye, the science guy. But I mean, the climate scam, as I said, is kind of twofold. So it's the idea around man-made climate change. I believe that we've got fluctuation in temperatures, solar flare activity. I mean, of course, you know this, but we're coming out of an ice age and we're naturally warming. And I believe that this narrative is being used to instill fear and bring in authoritarianism and control through the guise, and this is the part 2, of net zero, to get to zero carbon emissions. And that's being done through ULEZ, low traffic neighborhoods, removing cars, bringing in electric cars, getting rid of combustion engines, all of these things. And also, as I reiterate, I think the most important point is introducing this constant need to be scared of human beings, like we're parasites, like we're teaching young people that we need to depopulate and we shouldn't have kids. Total nonsense. More kids, the better. More carbon, the better. And that narrative underpins a new culture, which is fear, and trusting the experts. It's the COVID times has set the precedent for the man-made climate change nonsense. And the reason, and the government knew, not all the governments knew, everybody knew within authority, that if we can get them to wear a mask that doesn't work, if we can get them to take a vaccine that doesn't work, if we can get them to submit to lockdown and not leave their house, even though that doesn't work, we can get them to do anything. That's what I think was the precursor to the climate change narrative. But we will see 15-minute cities. We're going to see more low-traffic neighborhoods. Sadiq Khan, our mayor of London, wants to remove cars from, for example, Oxford Street, which is like one of the main streets in London. And all of this is underpinned by net zero and the man-made climate change narrative. And I will not give up because of fighting that, because it's ultimately a question of pure freedom, and our freedoms being taken away from us with no debate, no public consultation, and no democracy. So yeah, I'll keep pushing.
Do you have any thoughts about whether excessive or money printing in general is helping to fund these non-productive woke ideas like wind turbines and solar panels and all that stuff? Is money printing a big part of what you're looking into?
Money printing, not so much. I wouldn't say I'm overly familiar with money printing. I would say that I've been more focused on where our taxpayers' money and whether that's being used in a direction to fund solar panel farms in Lincolnshire, which is a place I grew up in. It's very flat, the land of flat culture, and just people's farmland is being bought up everywhere for solar panels. It's just ridiculous. Solar panels need to get replaced constantly. They break. They don't harness enough power. It's not. I'm all for renewable energy. I'm all for advancements in technology. I'm not against that. But what I'm against is getting terrified. You buy your time. We've got loads of oil. I think we've got like 100 years at least to just sort of relax, work out what we need to do, find other ways to get energy, not destroy farmland, take taxpayers' money, put solar panels everywhere, remove cars, get electric cars, get the cobalt, all these woke people. Oh, I've got an electric car. Do you know where they get the cobalt from? Essentially slave labor. It's so hypocritical. So my concern is more where the taxpayers' money goes and how solar panels and wind farms are taking away farmland. There's a huge attack on agriculture in the UK. Don't know how familiar you are with inheritance tax policies.
Yeah.
And what they've been doing to farmers. And I've been very vocal on that as well, because the farmers are the backbone of Britain. Especially, they're sort of like, you get rid of the farmers and that essence of British culture is eroded even more. And inheritance tax is just going to kill so many small farms that have been around, been handed down the generations of family farms for hundreds of years. It's really, really sad, but a lot of farmers are struggling so much that somebody's coming along and saying, we'll offer you a load of money to build a solar panel project on your farmland. And because of that, the farmers are struggling so much, been pushed to breaking point, that a lot of them are just throwing the towel in and be like, we'll just take thousands and thousands of pounds and you can build solar panels. It's just really sad, really. It's again, all of this really can be stopped if we have proper public consultation, debate, and open scientific conversation. And it's as simple as that. It's complete censorship. I suppose if we have complete open debate and free speech, which is what I promote really above all else, then all of the ideas that I'm bringing forward would be in the public domain and in mainstream politics. And we would be able to just go, do you know what? I'm not happy with that. We're not going to do it. It's illogical. But there's clearly a greater agenda here. And there's clearly a much greater threat than just bad decision-making. I don't think it's bad policy. I think there's a legitimate orchestrated attempt to break the backbone of Britain, bring in mass surveillance, destroy our economy. You'll own nothing, be happy. Of course, many people are familiar with that term. Bring in kind of like a social credit system, communism, and all of this is. When I talk to people in the street and do public outreach, I start talking about net zero, climate change, COVID, the trans debates. freedom of speech, censorship, and they're like, what? They're all linked? And I'm like, yeah, they are actually. And it's hard to, it's very, very difficult to do that. But all it comes down to at the top of that is open debate and freedom of speech. And if we can get that nailed, then all of this will come out in the wash. I would say thank you so much for having me on. If anyone wants to find me and mention my social medias, will be in the description and so forth. My name is Montgomery Toms. If you type that into Instagram, YouTube, X, you'll find my social medias, and my website is montgomerytoms.com. You can head over there, have a look at my work, support me through there. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I hope I didn't ramble too much about at length about all sorts of different topics, but I've really enjoyed going into the nitty-gritty details about kind of fear and nudge theory as well, especially around the tube signs. Really annoy me. Specifically, I don't know why. People don't get as annoyed by them. For me, I get so angry.
Yeah, I'll say again, I'm just a huge fan of what you're doing. I think it's incredibly important work, and I think you're the right person to do it. So thank you again.
No, thank you so much.